Are you going to let me sit down? Okay. Hello and welcome. Hope you are well. Today's video is just going to be a bit more of an informal chat. I have been working pretty much monogamously on one project this week, and there's nowhere near as much progress as there should be because, yeah, it's not gone to plan. So I'll talk to you about that first. I'll probably show you my Eclipse because I'm thinking I'll probably do this as more of an informal knit and chat. I hope that's okay, as I haven't got many projects to talk to you about. I've got my coffee, no knitwear that I'm wearing today. I've got a dress on, just to let you know. If you do want to get in touch with me, I have an email address, and that is mariesyarnjourney@outlook.com. I'm also on Instagram, and you can find me as maries_yarn_journey. And there's also a Discord group which you can join. If you do want to take part in the early bird gift knits, Cal, there is you can post your photos of your works in progress and your finished objects on Instagram, and that's the hashtag early bird gift knits. And on Discord there is 2 threads that are eligible for prizes, and that's the finished objects and the works in progress. I don't think there's anything else I wanted to tell you before I get started. Like I say, first of all, I am going to show you the project I've been working on this week, and that is the Everyday Attitude by Suzanne Sommer. And then after that I will be knitting on my Eclipse, which I did work on last weekend, but I haven't done much on since then. I am on a bit of a time crunch today because I am working in a bit, but I thought I'd just have time to get this recorded and then get it edited and up for you, ready for Friday. Okay, so before I look at that, oh yeah, this is the one I want to talk to you about. I'm getting confused now. So the top that I've mainly been working on this week, and I'm not going to knit on it while we're knitting and chatting because I do need to refer to the pattern at the moment to keep track of my increases. It's a lovely top. I was doing a search on Ravelry, if you hadn't seen me mention it before, and trying to find a top that again would use up a hand-dyed single skein in a striped garment, because I do like my Eclipse top for using up that. I ended up with using this skein from my this is my Christmas Day skein from my Blue Fern Advent from 2024. And then this is a yarn that I got at East Anglia Yarn Festival, and it is Night Shift, I think it's called, and it's a colourway by Ellie from Craft House Magic. And yeah, where do I begin with the disasters? So if you've been here before, you'll know that I have gauge issues. I'm quite a tight knitter, although I'd just say neat knitter, you know. Yeah, I do tend to have quite a tight gauge. My gauge is often tighter than what the designers ask for in their patterns. And I have had where my gauge swatch lies to me. So this is the problem. I've done gauge swatches before, and it's not turned out that my knitting has actually been that gauge when I've been doing it. So there is a lot to talk about around that. but I'll get into that after. I will tell you about my issues with the top. So because of my previous gauge issues and everything, I didn't bother doing a swatch because my swatches have lied to me in the past. And what I have been doing in my last few projects, rightly or wrongly, is I have been casting on and checking my gauge and then adjusting needle size or starting again with a different size or whatever I need to do to adjust to the gauge that I'm getting. Now, I don't know what it is with this garter project, but I've found it very hard to know, because with a garter fabric it is quite stretchy, very hard to know if I'm on gauge or not. I found it hard reading gauge. This is my third attempt of knitting this. Can you believe it? I started off, the pattern recommends using a 3mm needle. Knowing my gauge issues with it being tight, cast on with a 3.25mm needle. Knit a bit, had a look at it, thought no, that's way too tight, and I was tight on gauge. So I thought it's all right. I'd only done about this much at that point, and I thought I'll just go up to a 3.5. So I went up to a 3.5, I think it was, knit a bit more. Still the gauge was the fabric looked different, but to me the gauge was reading exactly the same. So that's clearly I was doing something wrong. Back and forth with Mona as this was happening. Anyway, cut a long story short, with that first attempt, ended up on further along than I am on this now at the point, and I was on a 4mm, and I was still reading the same number of stitches, which was not right at all. And I could tell the fabric was really open. I wasn't sure I liked the fabric I was getting. And I thought, do you know what? I'm going to end up with a garment that's probably not going to even fit around my head if I carry on doing it the way I am at the moment. So now I know that I was so off on gauge, I really need to restart. So I calculated for the gauge I thought I was having, bearing in mind that I was knitting on a 4mm, and I did think it was a little bit too open. So I thought, right, what I'm going to do is I'm going to work out my gauge. And so instead of knitting a size 3, for the gauge I was getting, it was better for me to do a size 3 in the pattern. So I ripped it all out, started again, cast on for size 3. So that was fine, did size 3, and I decided, instead of casting, and I don't know why I decided this, but I think it was just because on a 4mm it was looking very open. I'd only done a few rows on 4mm, so I wasn't sure that my gauge was representative of what it would be on a 4mm. So I thought, right, I know what I'll do. I normally do go, and I will cast on with the 3.75mm, and I'll cast on the size 3, and with a 24 stitch gauge, that will give me a 40-inch bust circumference as the finished product. And I was fine with that, and I did think, well, it may well grow a little bit anyway, but 40 inches, I'm fine with that because my bust is 37. So knitting away, because on both these previous attempts I got further than what I had here, and I had actually got to the point where I was just working on the back. And so knitting away, and then I'd got to about this much again, and I thought, right, well, I better check my gauge. Lo and behold, what do you think happened? I no longer had a 24 stitch gauge, I had a 20 stitch gauge, which is what I needed in the pattern. So therefore that meant that I was going to end up with a top that was going to be absolutely massive on me. So I really just could not believe it. So I knit a few more rows while I considered all possible options. Missed out 2 decrease rows. Then because of the way the construction one was like, do you know what? I really just need to start this again. As much as I don't want to, that is what I need to do. And this is what got me thinking a lot about what I was going to talk about in the video today, because yeah, when I'll just show you this first. And the topic I wanted to talk about is knitting plans and knitting rules that we put on ourselves. So here we are. This is my progress. I've done a lot of talking about it and not shown you. I'm very pleased with how the fabric is coming out now. That's the right side. I absolutely love how these colours are knitting together, and I think that has been in my mind the whole time while I've been having these issues. Is I love this fabric, the way the colours are coming together, a little bit more lower contrast, and I want this top to fit me nicely. I want it to be right, and I want a top I love in my wardrobe. So instead of thinking, let's get this done more, I'm rushing, getting to the end and not even liking the garment. I knew that this is the time now where I need to really be you know, at the beginning, when I can't easily just rip it back. Yes, it's a few days worth of work, it's put me back on the top, but the only deadline on the knitting is deadlines we put on ourselves. And this is another thing that ties in with the knitting rules we set for ourselves. And to me, knitting is a hobby. And knitting is my only hobby, really, apart from I do enjoy my reading and we go out walking a bit, but it's my main hobby. It takes up most of my time. If I've got a free half an hour, I sit and knit. I really enjoy it. It brings me a lot of pleasure. And obviously I do the yarn festivals and everything else. And I think I've noticed quite a bit in the knitting community, and I don't know if you've noticed this as well. And I may just be overthinking things, as we tend to do. I'm seeing where a lot of us, including me sometimes as well, obviously, put these very, very high expectations. Now, I am a bit of a planner, so if you've got I plan out my weeks. I try to be organised so that I can get everything done. I think women tend to be more, or trying to be more that way, because we have so much that we're balancing with keeping a home, working. If you've got children, pets, whatever, life gets busy, and trying to manage all that, it can be a lot at times. And then you tend to then apply that to all areas of life. So when knitting is a hobby, it does fall into that. And like I say, I do like to plan out my weeks. I have my planner on my iPad, if you've seen my planning videos. It just keeps me on track with getting stuff done, gets things out of my head and onto paper, as it were. And I do like to have a plan, a bit of a rough plan with my knitting, but sometimes it can get to a point where it's too much. And I've seen quite a bit of that. There is a trend this year in the knitting community that everyone is stashing down. And a lot of people are on yarn bands. Now, for some people, because it is a very personal thing, and the knitting hobby is a personal thing, and any hobby is really. But sometimes I think that, let me know in the comments what you think. These rules we set on ourselves for our hobby can end up having the opposite effect to what we want. So for some people, collecting yarn is a much bigger part of the hobby than others. I wouldn't say I'm a yarn collector. I would say for me, I'm a yarn lover. I do get, you know, I love yarn, love nice yarns. When we go to festivals, I'm like a kid in a sweet shop, all this, all that. But I do find with myself that I feel better and enjoy my yarn more when I know I've got a plan for it. So that part of planning for that really works for me. But I think I'm finding a little bit this year, and I think some of the people I've seen online, I've decided that, you know, with my yarn stash, especially this, you know, I won't ever put myself on a yarn ban. And personally for me, if I was to put myself on a yarn ban, that would spoil that side of the hobby for me. But that isn't to say that I don't have in my mind, at the I only have a certain amount of storage for my yarn, and I've talked about this before. And for me, to outgrow that storage would be quite upsetting. And working out the amount of time it will take me, based on last year, what I managed to knit through all that would take me quite some number of years, and that's only if I'm going at the speed I was last year, which I may not do. And it's so I know for me personally, with the rule of thing, I know I'm never going to stop myself buying yarn. Not going to say I'm going to be banned, because I like going to festivals. I enjoy that. Although, yeah, the temptation is strong at festivals. Also, I know another side tangent to the yarn thing is, like, I'm happy if I've got my yarn organised in my cupboard and it fits in, and I've got a reasonable amount that I can work through, and plenty of choice. I like to have options because, you know, it's easy, you know, you do change your mind, don't you? When the seasons change, it's nice to start on different seasonal knits, all that sort of thing. And also, as my mum would say, you know, if you lose your job, you've got plenty to keep you busy while you're looking for another one, or some such comment. Do you know what I mean? If something drastically changes in your financial circumstances, you've got yarn to keep you going for a few years. But I don't really want to outgrow that storage area, and I get to a point with the storage as it is now that it's a bit of a mess again. It needs sorting out, as you do, and I find it very hard then to see my yarn or access my yarn. So yeah, I don't really want to be bringing a lot in. That's why I do like to monitor the ins and outs as well. I feel like I'm, you know, at full capacity, as it were. Not full, but, you know, the amount that I like to have in, I've got plenty there. I've got plenty to choose from. I've got lots of lovely yarns that I want to actually knit. And, you know, there's only so many hours in the day to do it. But I have, like I say, I have seen a lot of rules around yarning and stash and all that. I like to track it just so I know where I am with it all, how much I'm knitting through in the current year. And it's nice to know what you've got though. When I've got such a small storage space, it has to all be packed in quite tightly. I do try to keep it organised with all my sweaters quantities together, but it's not always easy when it's at the full point. So how are you with your stash? Is it where you want it to be? Is it too much? Is it too little? Because it is all it. A lot of these knitting rules that we put on ourselves are also unique to us, our craft, our situation. So other rules that we kind of put on ourselves is to get so many garments done so quickly. I do tend to have very, very lofty goals with how much I'm going to knit through. And I think one of mine that I definitely enjoy in my hobby, casting on new stuff. But I know that that means I have a tendency to have a lot of languishing whips. Now, for me, it's been a learning curve over these last few years to know how many garments I can have on the needles before I feel overwhelmed. I'm still working on this, to be fair. I do feel that if I've got 10 or under, including my blankets and long-term whips, then that's manageable for me. I don't like things to be on the needles too long, because it does get to a point where you either fall out of love entirely with the project, or I do, or I find that my tastes have changed or the seasons have changed. Yeah. So, yeah, I'm still working on that one really. And I think finding a balance for me of setting myself plans and goals, but then not making it too rigid that it takes the joy out of the hobby. Because I do feel like with some people in the knitting community, some of their rules that they're imposing on themselves are taking the joy out of their hobby, and I do think that is such a shame. One of the things that I've had a real spate of wanting to cast on lots of new things. Obviously, going to the festival makes you feel that way anyway. But I'd got to a point where, because I think at the moment I've got about 15 whips on my needles. And I got to the point where a few of my common used needle sizes I was out of needles basically. And what I thought to myself was, do you know what? Because I'm not one of these people that likes taking needles off projects. I always worry that even if I've made notes, that I may forget what size I was using. So I don't like to steal needles. I know some people do that, but it's not for me. I need to just keep them on. I mean, if I pick a project up and want to work on it, the needles are on there and I can just straight away work on it. You know, with all them projects and my bad memory, I would not like to be, and especially with the way my gauge is, you know, the pattern could say one thing and I've not written on the pattern, and yeah, that would be a disaster. But anyway, so I ordered some, I was going to get some new needles at East Anglia, but they didn't have any chow goose there, which is my preferred needles. So I decided to just order some. I thought, you know what? I want to cast on these new things and I'm just going to order some needles. And I'm glad I did, because I needed them for the top I'd cast on. So, how many whips is too many for you? Do you have some rules in your knitting hobby which bring you joy? Do you have some rules that are really not bringing you joy and you need to abandon? Do we need any rules? This is another thing, you see. I'm not sure that I'm the type of person that could just be like, especially with how much yarn I've got to get through, just be thinking, abandoning all rules. I know that, see, I don't think Mona has, although she is on she's trying not to buy much yarn this year, because she's got a very, very big stash that she wants to work her way through. And other than that, I think she just goes with the flow. And that's what works for her. No pressure. And is that the way to do it? I don't know, really. Would that mean I had about 500 working whips that were, well, languishing whips, I should say, that I'm not working on? I'd probably cast everything on. I don't know. Maybe I need to do a trial run of that. No knitting rules for a whole month. It's nice to have goals though, isn't it? To set yourself. But then if the goals are making you miserable, what is the point, really? So, as you can see, I'm knitting on my Eclipse top. It is coming along nicely, although I worked on it last weekend, but haven't really done much since then. Let's count the stripes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 19. So I've not got very far, have I, since we last spoke? Did I have 16 on last week? Can't really remember. Yeah, I did some at the weekend, but then, like I say, I've just been monogamously knitting on that top. I do find with, and I don't know if you get this as well, but with summer tops, it's like, because they're quite relatively quick to get through, even when you're doing like fingering weight tops, I seem to be more motivated to get them done and finished. Yeah, I'm very much tempted to do a month of no rules, just to see what happens, what I want to knit on, and just do what I want. But then, yeah. So do you plan out your knitting? Do you... I know Knitting Natty, she does this thing each week, and it would be great, wouldn't it, to do this? I'm sure you'd get through your projects. She plans out her projects pretty well, really, and each week she has a goal. So she does her goals, I think, at the beginning of the month. She decides what she wants to work on or get finished or done in that month, and then she kind of plans it out. But she has like set times through the day where she knits, and then time in the evening. But I can't imagine being that rigid with it, really. The other thing I did want to have a bit of a discussion about is, after my disastrous week on that top. Now, that top would probably be well on its way to being finished, because I'd be in the round and I'd be flying off. But it's like, with all the backs and forths, which hopefully, fingers crossed, will you know, mean I've got a better outcome on that top, which I think is more what I want my focus to be, because I enjoy the process of knitting and I spend a lot of time each day doing it, but I also enjoy having better quality finished garments at the end. So I really want to work on, in my knitting, getting better at that. Now I know that if I did a gauge swatch and then blocked it, and that was correct to what my knitting gauge would be and the blocked item would be and how much it would grow and all that sort of jazz, that would give me the most accurate sizing and finished garment. So the whole thing is, I think for me, slowing down a bit, not rushing, taking more care of what I'm doing and to get a better finished object. And I think so. I have got plans. As we're just saying, I'm going to abandon them, but this is to do with doing a video. I have got plans to do some of my learn to knit videos, doing a learn to knit a no frill sweater by Petite Knits with me. Obviously it's a paid for pattern, so that would have to be purchased before you follow along, but I will be showing all the techniques used, showing each stage, and for that I am going to do a gauge swatch. So this is going to be a good test, I think, where I am with gauge and how accurate my swatch gauge is to my final finished garment once it's blocked. So because obviously I'm doing the learn to knit series for that sweater, I'm hoping to hopefully do that throughout the, well, get the videos recorded throughout the Easter holidays, because I'll probably get a little bit more knitting time because I won't be doing the school run. And I'm thinking that obviously I'm going to be showing the correct way, gauge, swatch, block it, all that sort of jazz. And then I'm going to be knitting this sweater. And because I will be doing the videos and, you know, taking it a bit slower, as in reading through it, showing the techniques, all that sort of thing, I'm hoping that, yeah, it will help me find out if my blocked swatch gauge matches my final garment blocked gauge. That will be a really interesting thing to do. Do you do gauge swatches? Do your swatches turn out accurate? Do you block your swatches? Because obviously doing a swatch and blocking your swatch is the most accurate way. But it's very hard, I think, if your flat knitting is much different in gauge to your in the round gauge, because that's a factor in all this as well. And do you do a fake in the round swatch? Because the other thing is, if you're being really pedantic about it, I mean, how accurate can you be on a gauge swatch? You know, say if you're knitting in a 9-inch circular to do a swatch, or magic loop, or flat, all those techniques can alter your gauge. And I know that I think I've relaxed a bit now, because I think that's why my socks have differed a bit, and I've got used to, because I'm consistently knitting my socks now on a 9-inch circular. I think I've loosened slightly my gauge when doing that. So that does have a factor, doesn't it, though? Each of those different techniques and representing those in a swatch. because I've never really done one of those swatches, because I always just knit my swatch flat, just for ease. But I know that you are really, if you're knitting in the round, you're supposed to do a fake in the round swatch. But it just seems to be such a, I don't know how true the gauge would be to your circular knitting gauge doing that, and also it seems to me to be such a waste of yarn. But obviously you can rip that out and reuse it in your project, but then you end up with way more ends and stuff, and I was having trouble with my knitting getting my tension to look even when joining in a new ball of yarn. Well, I think I've waffled on for quite a long time now about these things, but I'd love to hear your thoughts and opinions, because that's why, you know, we do these videos. So, knitting rules, do you have any? Do they bring you joy and add to your hobby, or do they make your hobby not as joyous? And gauge. What type do you do? Gauge swatches? What type of gauge swatches do you do? Are they accurate for you or not? And yeah, my overall thoughts are, do what makes you happy in your hobby, because that is most important. And if that means being monogamous, or knitting on 500 projects at once, or having a stash that fills your whole house, your hobby is your hobby. And a hobby should bring you joy. And if it doesn't, do something different. Take up painting. Anyways, right, I better get going. I've got to work soon. Hope you've enjoyed my absolute ramblings today, and I will see you in the next one. Have a fabulous weekend, whatever you are doing. Bye.